On this episode, we make our hair all spiky and talk like emo kids and level up our magic and summon our high school friends. I don't know what happens in these games.
You son of a bitch.
Welcome to Save Every Universe. My name is Alec Garcia. I'm a high school student who lives out a year of school in a modern Tokyo, complete with night and day cycles and weather systems and social simulations and... Go ahead. Sorry, I was throwing up.
Yeah, great. My name is Robbie. I'm a boy with a yo-yo, a bat, and special psychic powers that must unite his friends and stop an evil cosmic beast from destroying the world.
Nice, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And who were you last
Can you
week?
believe I haven't been him before?
I know. Have you not?
No.
This isn't a
obviously,
Batman
I don't-
situation, is it? Where you
No.
did it over and over?
No.
Okay.
Last week I was the stunt writer from Trials Fusion.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I think I said like radiation and robots. I'm like
Yeah.
writing my way through.
I was thinking like Wastelandy stuff, like Borderlands. That's kind of where my brain started to go, and then none of the other stuff fit. But
It's kind of weird because it's like a dystopian future. There's not
That's
much of
what
a narrative.
Trials is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there's like some incident that happened. I think you might even be a clone as the writer. I don't know.
is that the deal? Like you get cloned over and over
I
as
think
your
so.
writer gets killed and dies and
Yeah.
stuff? That would make sense.
Because the AI will say stuff like, of all my writers, you're my favorite one. Or whatever. So like, I think she's implying like you've
been cloned just over.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why you can go through all the absurd deaths.
That's
or
pretty
whatever.
cool.
But if you like try and look it up, it's weird.
It gets a little dicey.
Yeah, because
the
that's not what the
narrative and
game's about, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really for the narrative.
Right. And last week I was Dante from Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
Swords and pistols, and that was a good game. I really liked the original. I didn't play any of the new stuff. I heard the reboot or the newer one was fantastic. I didn't play it though.
Yeah, but it looks like they're just taught. Well, it was a different studio. Is
Yeah.
Ninja Theory? It was a different studio.
Was it Ninja Theory?
It might have been.
That would be crazy if it was Ninja Theory. I should check it out if
And
it
it was
is. I do
supposed
like
to
their
be
stuff.
like grittier. It's kind of
Yeah.
darker. But now they're just going back.
I remember
Capcom
the
through
original being kind of like that, a little gritty, a little dark. It wasn't
Yeah.
super colorful, zany stuff.
that. Well,
Was it?
Yeah. So did you play 2 and 3?
No, I just played one, the very original, and it was
Okay.
like dark. There was like demons and
It got
devils
zanier.
and churchy, like old Gothic churches and stuff. And
Yeah,
it was
I mean,
cool.
it's the same guy who did Bayonetta, right? And
Okay.
so it just continued getting like crazier and zanier. I don't think I played any. I haven't played the last couple installments. I played 1 and 2. I think I played 3. But then you like, he's got an evil brother and all this crazy stuff. I didn't follow that. And now it's not even the same. It's not Dante as the main.
Oh, they switched it, right?
Well, yeah, it's confusing. When I
Yeah.
saw the big reveal for the new Devil May Cry coming out,
Yeah.
Dante's only at the very end, right? And so I had to I went and Googled that and looked at it. I was like, I don't understand what's happening.
So that's actually a perfect segue into what we're about to talk
Yeah.
about, because that's my beef with a lot of these games, and all the things I said at the beginning of this. If you're still listening, I was joking, actually. I don't really have a beef with Japanese games in general. Today we're going to actually talk about JRPGs, or East versus West.
yeah.
And I think we're going to end up getting into the topic of JRPGs and those.
Well, because you have to.
Yeah, and I just want to kick this off by saying I don't have a beef with Japanese games in general. I love Capcom. I love like all the early Metal Gear stuff. Like a lot of my favorite games of all time would be by Japanese developers. I think I mostly have a beef with JRPGs, but that's what we're talking about today. East versus West. What have you on the docket today, Robbie?
So I would be remiss if I didn't say, like, JRPGs were a huge part of my childhood.
Yeah.
Growing up. I played like all the Squaresoft games. Obviously they were Nintendo games, but the JRPGs like, the Secret of Mana, Legend of Mana, the Mana games, Super Mario RPG, Chrono Trigger, Suikoden 2, like I played all those games
Right.
and loved it. To me, at the time at least, I didn't find other games. All the Final Fantasy games. I was always playing those. Like to me, there weren't other games with that rich of a story, like
Right.
with that complex of a world, that vast. I mean, that was more like an open world. You know what I mean? So it really drew me
Because
in.
open world games in what they are now in the Western sense are not really, they weren't a thing back
No,
then.
right. If you were playing like an open world,
Like Link to the Past was like the closest
Yeah.
thing to like where you could roam around and find treasures and all that
but like in the
stuff.
Final Fantasy games, it's always been like that.
Yeah.
From the NES, the very first
Yeah,
one.
that's true.
You
Huh?
were walking
and
around
Final
the-
Fantasy VII was like
Yeah.
huge. You could go get your ship and fly around and
Right.
your chocobo and all that stuff.
Yeah, all of those JRPG games that I mentioned or that I didn't mention all have an open world exploration aspect to
Right.
them. So as a child, at least, and I know that ages me, whether I'm older or younger or whatever, but to me, those were like the games of my childhood. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, we were friends back then, and you played some of them.
Yeah, I did. I played I didn't really get too much into like Chrono Trigger and stuff like that, but I liked Final Fantasy back then. I don't know. I never got into like Super Mario RPG or Earthbound. Those were not my thing. I love like Mega Man, some of the Capcom stuff that was like my favorites of all time from childhood.
Right. So there's some great Japanese games that are not JRPGs from that. And Capcom obviously has a whole list. All the Resident Evil games, right? Street Fighter, Mega Man, which I'm really excited about. The new one.
Mega Man 11 is going to be so cool. Yeah.
And even if it's not, the theme that we got for pre-ordering it is the coolest theme that they've released on
all
PlayStation.
The old classic Mega Man stuff, the music, the sounds. It's fantastic.
I would have paid like $30.
And I love that they're keeping like the old Mega Man vibe. Like, cause they tried to go all kinds of different futuristic directions and update gameplay. They did like a weird 3D Mega Man over the shoulder.
Those actually all did really well though.
I did play at least the first one, and
there was Mega Man Legends.
Okay, but I'm so excited for 11 that they're really going back to the roots with modern graphics and stuff. Yeah.
Actually, so I was reading the Game Informer that did the cover on.
Oh, that's right.
The big cover story, and the guy who created it like grew up on Mega Man games. Because and I apologize for the pronunciation. Kaiji Inafune is like the original. He was the big player at Capcom. He basically made Mega Man what it is as we think of it.
Okay.
And he hasn't done it. He's not at Capcom anymore.
Interesting. And he wasn't interested in like coming back for another installment or something.
No.
So they got somebody else. Okay,
so that's why there's been such a big gap, because no one's like really wanted to step up,
take up that mantle. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess the Blue Bomber is bigger in the West than he is in the East. Like he's a big American European. We love him. He doesn't resonate as much.
And maybe that, like what you were saying, like you liked the deep, rich story and the dialogue and the characters and all that stuff. And I wanted to run and shoot things when I was like that was, and there wasn't this. I think in modern times people think of like the West as being like the middle-aged action hero shooting everything, and then if you go to the East, you have these JRPGs that take it slower and more mechanics focused and stuff. But back when it like most good games that were coming out of Japan, you still had that divide, but they were both Eastern games, whatever.
Right. Well, it's been an interesting trend, right? Because like a decade ago, the Japanese gaming developers controlled the market. They were 50% of the market.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was Nintendo and Sega back in the day.
And then Sony, with the PlayStation, like until the Xbox, they were unopposed when it came to like console gaming.
Right.
There's been some interesting cultural like history divides. Like mobile gaming is bigger in Japan than it is here.
Right.
They've apparently been really big in the mobile scene since like 2003. I don't even think my phone could play games.
I actually saw some like good arguments for the Easter like turn-based tactics games, like turn-based RPGs and stuff like that. I do really well on phones because you don't need any fast twitch reflex stuff. They've sort of found a new home in mobile, and in Asia, mobile's huge. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I talked a little bit about Evoland that I was playing.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a dungeon crawling aspect to it that's kind of harder to control on the phone. It's okay, but then there's also like these random encounter Final Fantasy style traditional RPG fights. They're perfect, and I'm surprised. I'm like, this is great. I want to play through like Final Fantasy VI this way or something like that. So it's actually it's been the gateway drug. I think I'm going to start playing more, finding some of the ports because they're out.
Yeah.
Square and Nintendo have been porting these to mobile. But anyway,
Final Fantasy VI is like one of the best selling like on iPhone or whatever.
Yeah. It's a good game.
Yeah.
Some people think it's the best one.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, I watched the cutscene and played like the beginning of it. I haven't like really dove into it all the way yet.
I like it. It's it takes a while. It's a very long start.
Slow burn. Yeah. But the villain though. Yeah. button. Let me shoot something.
Well, like, okay,
so he's one of the best villains of all time.
Kefka, yeah. He's really good. But if you contrast it with like, because you played
is
7.
He very Kefka-esque?
That's
a Kafka. No. Just go.
So, like, if you contrast, like, the beginning of 7, you're coming in on a train, you're right in the action, right?
Yeah.
That's not really...
Yeah, it was very westernized compared to some of the other JRPGs out there. Yeah.
I mean, I think whatever. It doesn't quite throw you in the action quite as quickly.
No, there's like a long, like, the credits is like a long, slow walk, and you're, like, looking down over, like, a town or something like that. You're, like, up on this cliff, and everyone's
You start in the Magitech armor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, for you, I'm surprised you got...
That far.
I mean...
Well, it wasn't making me push a damn car and talk about my struggles as a royal prince and shit.
Look,
so
those struggles for nobility
it
are
looked
real.
Cool. It looked like combat might be coming, so that was enough. to like
Dude,
keep me on board.
it's funny because the combat in Final Fantasy 15
It's much more arcade hack and slash,
yeah,
right?
it's like fast paced.
I have a feeling I would like it if I could get past the beginning.
Yeah, maybe you should just come over. I'll play the beginning for you, or I'll sign in as you, get you through the intro.
Pour me a tall glass of whiskey while you get through the beginning, and then I'll play.
We'll Conan O'Brien it while you have commentary.
That's what I need. I need like a clueless gamer help handhold situation to like get into JRPGs.
And then once we're into the exciting part, I'll give you back the controller.
Because I feel exactly like Conan's like, oh my gosh, shut up when the guy's like explaining the setup of the game. Sometimes I feel like that with JRPGs specifically.
Really?
Yeah,
dude. Well, all right, whatever.
And I know like how blasphemous that is, and I know they are good games. Like mechanically, I know there's good characters. I wish I could get into them. Every time I try, man, I'm like, I want to just shove something in my eye, you know?
All right, let's talk a little bit about how things like changed, right? Why did they kind of go away for a while? Because I think to understand like how the trends have developed over the last 15 years, you have to understand like how games have changed in the last 15 years. When it was like Sony, Sega, those guys were controlling all the market. We played those games because that's kind of all we had, right? Shooters were almost only on PC, which was big in like Europe and some here if you were a PC gamer.
Yeah, but I mean, to play the hottest, latest shooter, you had to have a nice PC to like accommodate it. It wasn't open and accessible and mainstream the way consoles are now.
Right. And I mean, then Xbox and Halo and those types of things like Gears of War really brought a completely different aspect to gaming.
Right.
More mature. The focus was on like gritty realness, shooting, which is not popular in Japanese gaming, or it wasn't. I guess I can't speak to, I don't think it's a huge thing. They're not as big.
No, from everything, I even found more recent articles and they said that it's like shooters are almost an exclusively Western thing. Yeah.
They
not
prefer
to say
more
people in Asia don't play them, but they're not, Japanese companies and stuff aren't making them. Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's exceptions to that, right? Like Devil May Cry. Is obviously shoot 'em up.
It has so many sword mechanics though. Like it wouldn't be a true shooter to a Western person.
And it's a like mechanical based, right? There's something to the complexity
the
of the combos.
I saw some people like, it was like incredible combos. Like it was like a whole YouTube video montage deal, and people were doing crazy stuff because apparently if you want to hack and slash and just shoot crap, you can do that.
Yeah.
But if you want to dive deep into the mechanics, it's made so that you can get really sophisticated with the combo system, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that's what appealed more to the Eastern.
Yes.
Right? It wasn't necessarily that you're shooting, it's that there's a mechanic, there's a system, which tends to be a bigger aspect of like Japanese games, right? So there was I read an article from 2010 about like the fall of Japanese gaming. That same developer, Kaiji Inafune from Capcom, he said he like looked out on the floor of the Tokyo Game Show and was like, we're dead. Yeah. Like we've lost. He said I have a quote here by him in 2010. He said, everyone loves sushi in the West, but you can't just serve sushi here like it is in Japan. So like even though, you know, we all eat sushi, but you couldn't just traditionally, I don't personally know the differences.
Like the deep fried Las Vegas roll with the sauce on the top.
And the avocado and the, right. So we can all agree that sushi's great, but how we eat it is completely different. So when the way he saw gaming it was just dead. What I've seen, they're calling like the last couple years, I saw some articles that called it like the Japanese gaming renaissance, that it's like making a big comeback. If you look at like top sales, they're actually topping the charts again. And so one of the things I want to talk about is why do you think that is?
I think we touched on this a little bit in retro, right? Like what is a game, right? And now there's all this discussion about like Detroit or even a Naughty Dog game is starting to sort of walk that line of it's a movie with buttons and stuff, and it's a very linear thing. And it seems like there is a little bit of a drive because the indie thing is huge too, right? And those are very mechanics focused. Like the game Celeste right now is getting praised for how tight its mechanics are, and it's a great platform puzzle thing.
Right.
It seems like there is more of a desire now for mechanics, like for game. And in the West, I saw one thing where they were talking about how in North America, it is like, it's Hollywood. It's the capital of cinema. So our games naturally gravitated toward big, grand action shoot spectacle and heavy on story, where it seems like the Japanese market always stayed a little bit more focused on things that were games, right? Things that were fun to play. And it seems like that's really where their focus is. And now that we've had, I don't know, like a decade of Western style, Hollywood style gaming, and people are sort of getting exhausted by the AAA thing, like the Call of Duty's, the story's always the same. And it feels like going and seeing the popcorn action movie that you've seen before that came out last year. Like there's a little bit of burnout there. And I think gamers, I don't know, maybe it's creating sort of a counterculture now where gamers want to go back to things that are just fun games with good mechanics.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. One thing I would say about the story is Western games now have a really good story. I don't think they always did. And
No,
that's why Japanese games like the Final Fantasies, like the JRPGs.
So I would say though that the stories told in the West they borrow heavily from Hollywood, right? From traditional like screenplay structure. And in the East, it's a much more loosey-goosey and it's much more fantasy. It's a much, they're not adhering to any specific formula of how a story should be told. It kind of just goes and lets you enjoy the mechanics along the way.
That's true.
And it is much more fantasy indulgent with swords and knights and honor and all that stuff.
Though, I mean, I wouldn't say all of them have, there are some
not all, but
crazy bad shit. It seems like in every Final Fantasy I play, except for, in my opinion, 7, but most of them, it's like the last quarter, they just start like dropping ecstasy and I don't know what they're
weird
like.
Stuff.
It gets weird, right?
Yeah.
It always has like a weird, that's true in anime a lot too. Like, I know the people who like it, that's great. I know there's some good anime fans that listen to us, and I don't watch a lot. I will say, like, I watched Trigun, and the ending, like the end quarter, I was like, what the fuck is going on, right? Like, so,
but
we don't do that because we have like formulas, right? There's like actual formulas that Western screenwriters
these are the
and
types
gamers,
of content people want to consume. This is how you write a movie.
At this point, you need to have this beat. You need to be hitting this goal.
It's very tight and structured, and it makes a ton of money because there is truth to how people want to consume things, at least in the West, right? But so I did read a couple articles that made that point, though, that kids in the East grow up watching anime and reading manga.
I mean, sure.
Manga?
I was called it manga, but
I
don't know. I also don't speak Japanese.
That's how I would say it. Anyway, but yeah, so like those are the types of stories they're telling, and they're like, and so when you see that in a video game, it's not like this what the fuck just happened. You're like, oh yeah, no, it's kind of like in the manga where they Like, you'll hear people who are really into, even in the West, people who are into manga and anime who are like, oh yeah, it was just like the series. I thought it was fantastic. And you're like, it was batshit crazy and it made no sense. And they're like, yeah, but it was like true to the book. And you're like, okay, I guess
the book is batshit crazy. Yeah.
But in the West, we grew up watching like action movies and watching Hollywood movies, and so when we go to video games, there is some sort of parallel there of the type of content you start consuming early is this type of thing you grow to expect in your gaming a little bit later on.
Yeah, I would say that's true. But what I think is happening now is I think Japanese games have brought in a lot more of the Western influences, right? I mean, for example,
and vice versa. I think they're definitely influencing each other.
Think about like who like some of let's say the top 3 developers for Sony are, right? It's Sucker Punch, Naughty Dog, and Insomniac, right? Those are like at least some of the big, and they're making good story-rich games, right? But I know Naughty Dog is owned by Sony, and I think Sucker Punch is as well.
I don't know for sure.
So they're owned by a Japanese game creator.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But they're huge Western. They're making these big Western games.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, Naughty Dog is like the champion of what I would consider
like a Hollywood style playable thing. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that dichotomy right there says something about like where we're at with gaming, right? Where clearly both sides are influencing each other now. Something I was reading about like the new Resident Evil is they got to that gritty, realistic, scary. That's more inspired by what some would call like Western gaming, right?
Like and Western horror movies and stuff.
But the menu is not like, it's still very item mechanical. There's still a lot of aspects of
that are very Japanese.
Right.
Yeah.
So like they're trying to find the balance between what audiences in both sides like, and they're making some really kick-ass games. I think Breath of the Wild is a good example of that.
Yeah, you said this on where we talked about Breath of the Wild, that Breath of the Wild wasn't great because it reinvented open world games. It was great because it reinvented Zelda. Right. And I think that's a really smart comment, and I'm never going to compliment you ever again now. That's it. That's the one you get.
Right.
But
I can live with that. Okay. That's one more than I thought I'd ever get.
Yeah.
So,
but I think that's really true, and it is amazing that they took like the Western style concept of an open world and brought it into a Zelda game. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty mind blowing.
Right. Like, well, when the Western games like became those big expansive games like Far Cry, Skyrim, Assassin's Creed, all the Mass Effect Bethesda games, right? Or sorry, Mass Effect and BioWare games, and then the Bethesda games as well, like Fallout. That was a big deal, right? That was open world in a way we'd never seen it before.
Right.
So all of a sudden, those of us that did play Final Fantasy VII or whatever, are like, holy shit, this is amazing, right? So I think it's interesting in that now that JRPGs, like, I mean, Final Fantasy 15 now mimics that. Breath of the Wild mimicked that, right?
And Final Fantasy 14, I saw a couple people say that it was more open world than most other Final Fantasy games ever had.
14's the MMO.
Yeah. Is that true? Is it more open world than other Final Fantasy games, do you think?
I don't know what that means. More open world.
Okay, I don't know what that means either. But I saw 14. Some people talking
it's
about about how
MMO.
like they cited 14 as like evidence that the West has influenced the East. It looks like everything I've seen from 14 looks like a very true Final Fantasy experience. It looked like an updated 11 to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would agree. I would say some of the influences aren't because of the open world.
Okay.
It's because of the narrative. I would say the story. I would say the more action-based. It's more action-based than like 11 was.
Okay.
Somebody who plays like Naughty Dog games would not find it action-based, right? But
Yeah.
if you play like slower RPGs, it is more action-based. It's a lot more flashy. The character development is richer. I don't know. I mean, it is more
based
of a
on-
Western MMO.
Based on the confusion at that question,
Yeah.
I would like to get into this because like as I was reading like what makes a game, like do you prefer Eastern or Western, there's a ton of articles, ton of forums out there, right?
Yeah.
And you would get on one that was like clearly in favor of Eastern style games,
Yeah.
right? And they would be like, this is what makes them great. And then you would go and you would find one that was clearly biased toward Western games and they'd say, this is what it was great. And if you didn't know the title, you didn't know who was biased on top of what, and you just look at the list, they're almost the same.
Right.
And so do you think that's true? Do you think it depends on sort of what camp you're in? Because I think there are good stories on both sides. I think there are good mechanics on both sides. Like, it seems like it's a very divisive, biased thing.
Yes. To me, the things that set them apart the most are really stylistic things, right? And so to me, like, I think that's why you don't like JRPGs as much.
Right.
Because well, sometimes you like good dialogue.
Sometimes.
Skip. You've gotten better at it.
I have.
In your older years as you've aged. But the worlds are rich, the characters are good, but there's like a style, so my wife plays Final Fantasy 14 with me.
Right.
She's never played any other game. And they'll kind of do something that's kooky or weird or talk a certain way. And she's like, what's this about? I'm like, actually, it's a Japanese, like to me, I was like, that's a JRPG. Like, that's just what these are. And she'll be like, well, that's a girl. I'm like, that's a boy, Ashley.
Yeah.
She's like, how can you
it is
tell?
a stylistic
It's
thing, though.
obvious to me it's a boy.
Because you've played enough of these games,
Right.
and you have watched more anime than me,
than
probably
you.
the average person.
Yeah, probably a little bit.
Maybe not the average. I don't know.
We have
fairly steeped, but
we have some fans in Discord that I think are much
more,
than
but
I am.
the designs of male characters is a little bit more effeminate, and the hair is crazy. Like the colors are bright and bold. The style of speech is really bright and bold.
Yep.
And over the top. And I have a hard time with all of that. And I was looking at Persona 5 because it made the list of like best games of the year and stuff. I was like, okay, cool. Like
I assumed you read
I will
about it
check out anything
based on your character.
Yeah. And it's like, it starts out like this game's about being a high school student for 1 year. And it's like, what the fuck? Why would anybody want to do that in a video game? That sounds awful. I have a hard, and it does seem, it's always like you're a kid under these impossible circumstances and you must band together with your friends and overcome together.
Are you trying to just read my intro?
Is that what you?
That's close to what I said, yeah.
I have a hard time with that. I know that makes me a shallow Western biased gamer.
It does.
Because like I do like the grizzled, let's shoot everything. I loved Wolfenstein too. I loved Doom, and that is just straight up, I'm the hero, let's kill everything.
Yeah.
And I can do it all by myself. It's a very Western idea. And so yeah, I do have a hard time
But it's not Western because,
the,
see, they both have wacky narratives, or sometimes are even a weak narrative,
Yeah.
right? I'm not saying Persona has a weak narrative, but there are Japanese games. I think Devil May Cry is a little weaker. Especially like Devil May Cry.
And it was
2.
more about the great combo mechanics and
Yeah.
stuff. You could draw a parallel between that and something like Doom, where there was a weak narrative, but it was about the great combat systems and stuff like that. Yeah.
But what that combat system is what changes it greatly, right?
Correct, yeah.
Shooting hordes of demons. There's no mechanical based trick to it. I mean, you got to be quick, you got to be a good shot, you got to have quick reactions.
Right.
But there's
not
something
this deep, intricate combo system like
Right.
what you would see in a Devil May Cry, like in an Eastern game.
Right. But if you bring in something, see, and that's why I think it's hard to say this is one or the other, right? Because like, in my opinion, Dragon Age, like all the BioWare games have a more complicated strategy,
Right.
even though it's open world, even the later ones like Inquisition, if you want to just get in there and spam hack and slash, you'll probably get through the game.
Yeah.
But if you want to like delve into the trees and
Right.
figure out what combos are and figure out how characters complement each other, that reminds me more of like a complicated RPG element.
Even to their action, they take an RPG systems approach to that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to me I think those are the types of games that caused Western gaming to hit that next level, right?
Yeah.
Because there is more depth, and that appeals to people who like both.
Right.
And I by no means would say I prefer one or the other, because it depends on my mood. In fact, I sat down yesterday, I was like, oh, I want to play through Kingdom Hearts 2 before the third one comes out in December.
Yeah.
But I haven't finished God of War yet. I'm going to go finish God of War. You know what I mean? And those two, you compare Kratos to Sora.
Yeah.
Talk about different heroes, right?
Yeah.
The Keyblade, the axe, the motive, all of it. Completely different. But I love the shit out of both of those games.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Save Every Universe. If you enjoyed this episode, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Save Every Universe.
If you would like to share what you think are the differences, you can reach us at saveeveryuniverse@gmail.com.
I'm just saying, let's not be divisive here. Or aggressive. Nobody get aggressive. You can also...
if anybody gets aggressive, I'll kill you.
You can also leave feedback in the form of a 5-star review on the platform of your choice.